Okay, I promise we will get into the review. It's gonna be a rant review because there are a lot of things I want to actually establish before we get into that. And the first thing is that in the publishing industry, in today's world, fame can literally make sure that you get away with anything. First of all, I'm not sure whether it's white privilege or is it fame, because I have seen a lot of people who are white who don't have a large audience, who have been completely destroyed and cancelled for this exact thing that we will talk about. So I have a greater suspicion that it's actually not about white privilege, but instead it's about fame. Because you see, in the publishing industry, you can publish anything and you can get away with it, and the publishers will still pick you up if you're famous. They don't care anymore. They care about money. And this really makes me sad, because to me it means that the integrity of the publishing world is practically dead. And the Stormdancer, this book, is a prime example of why that seems to be the case. Because in this book, there are such blatant cultural assassinations that are going on. Because you see all the characters that he has, all the events that they take part in, and all the things that they do moment to moment does not in any way exhibit behavior I have witnessed from Japanese people. Because you see, in my university, I have actually quite a good number of Japanese colleagues, and I noticed these things, and these things are not difficult. They are very easy to research. However, because Jay Kristoff missed them, it means that he just wanted to use diversity as a marketing gimmick. He just wanted to get that money, and they published him. And after he got the backlash, they are still publishing him. This was published in 2012. Today it's 2021, and he has published 3 books in the Nevernight trilogy. Alright? So, in the publishing industry, fame can make sure that you do anything and get away with it, no matter how hard you f up. It pisses me off because I really value integrity. I value honesty in people. If you want to do something, I want to see you do that thing properly. Of course, if it's your taxes, you your taxes, I don't care. But if you're really going to be depicting other people, other cultures, and other experiences that you have not had yourself in your stories, I want you to do the best that you can possibly do, because it shows to me that you care about being artistic. It tells me that you care about art. It tells me that you care about writing. It tells me that you care about doing your art properly. Because if you're going to be depicting another culture, you better make sure that you come complete, that you do not half-ass it, that you do not attempt cultural assassination. Holy... Let's talk about that. I will in fact give you beat by beat examples toward the latter part of the story. But first of all, not only is this book terrible in terms of how it depicts Japanese people, but it is actually awful in terms of narrative. Spoiler warning for anyone who wants to read this book. I do not recommend that you read it, but if you want to read it, spoiler warning, because I will be spoiling even the ending. First of all, Jay Kristoff attempts terribly at social commentary. He attempts so terribly at making sure that he has social commentary depth, caste, social hierarchy. And in this story, there are a lot of different hierarchies. One particular example is when Yukiko actually meets the Cage, and basically these people, they are sort of rebels, and they are fighting the Shogun. But generally speaking, these people, these Cage, they are in a very poor situation, and a lot of them have been wronged by the Shogun, and the Shogun is basically running the show. And he is running the islands, and he basically makes sure that everything is in an iron grip. We have the protagonist Yukiko. Actually, she joins her father on a hunt to find Thunder Tiger, and then her and her father get split off. Her father gets imprisoned because he failed to capture the Thunder Tiger, but the Thunder Tiger is actually with Yukiko, and Yukiko meets this Cage, and technically speaking, later she comes into the castle. And every time in the story, every major part, because you see, before they departure on the hunt, after the hunt when they meet the Cage, and then when she comes back to meet the Shogun, all of these major parts of the story, every time there is this social commentary on hierarchies in this place, and there's a lot of poor situations that are described. Another major commentary that happens in the story is concerning orders, okay, and taking orders from an authority. This is also half-assed. For instance, Daichi, who actually kills Yukiko's pregnant mother, well, guess what? He was ordered by the shogun. This really angers Yukiko, and that is the main reason why Yukiko actually tries to kill the shogun. And technically speaking, this is also half-assed. Another theme is familial bond. This is the only one that is executed with any depth. Because you see, familial bond in this particular story is between the Thunder Tiger and also Yukiko. Because initially Yukiko is hunting this, but when the ship is falling, Yukiko, because she has kami spirit, she cannot take the pain of this particular monster dying, because she can feel the pain of other animals and she can actually read their mind. Well, Yukiko saves this Thunder Tiger. This is the only one that is of any depth. Why? Because you see, Yukiko is hunting the Thunder Tiger initially. So that's what it looks like to the Thunder Tiger. And when the Thunder Tiger, when she saves the Thunder Tiger, well, he pushes her off. And this is very important because it means both of them do not trust each other, but eventually they develop, a familial bond. The other two are ruined by the fact that the villain, the shogun, is terribly evil. You see, what makes the familial bond theme very interesting and how it is executed is because both sides, initially, they don't like each other. And they both have good reasons to not like each other. You see, that is a very interesting dynamic. But with the shogun and everything else, okay, we don't have to engage with the story in any level. Because you see, the shogun is so terribly evil, no one gives a no one cares. The shogun is a Nazi, basically. So the commentary that is spent a lot of time, and he attempts to do this a lot, it fails every time. It falls flat. All of these monologues, they fall flat because the shogun is so evil that you always just blame the shogun. If you're going to make social commentary, make sure that you do not have cartoonish villains. And he has a cartoonish villain. The story fails miserably because of this. But let's talk about the main reason why I really hate this story, and it is the cultural assassination that is happening in here. Because all the characters in this story do not behave like anywhere near to as if they were raised in Japan. They behave as if they were raised in America, and they are wearing Japanese attire, Japanese clothes. The main reason why I say this is because of how, even I, who has had, just average interaction with Japanese students, can easily notice that their behavior is drastically different. One major difference is how Japanese students, the ones I've met, they are subtle, okay? I come from East Africa. There is not much subtlety in our cultures. If we want something, we say it directly. If we want you to leave our house, we will just tell you to. If we want you to stay, we will tell you, please stay. Yeah. And so we don't really practice subtlety a lot. But in Japan, people are a lot more subtle because that's how they behave. And everyone picks up the subtlety because they were raised there from childhood, that they have practiced this complex social interaction. And it is very easy for them to pick it up. When I came to this university, it was very difficult for me to actually make friends with Malay students as well as Japanese students because they are much more subtle and I was much more direct. So they didn't feel comfortable with me. But eventually I ended up learning their behavior. This subtle behavior, this subtlety is missing in any of the conversations. And you would think because, subtext, subtlety in dialogue is actually considered a good trait. But there is no subtext in the dialogue in this story. The characters, therefore, do not feel as if they were raised or as if they belong in East Asia. This is not specific to Japan. This is all of East Asia. In Vietnam, people are a lot more subtle, okay? Even in Southeast Asia, where I currently live, people are very subtle. In Japan, people do not behave openly, okay? Like in class, for instance, back before COVID-19, do you know what the teacher asks a question? All the African students, they just raise their hand. But the Japanese students, the Malay friends, they do not. Why? That's because to them, they prefer safe in face than being shamed in public, than getting the answer wrong. You understand? But I am not bothered by getting the answer wrong. But none of this subtle behavior is present in the story. It tells me that Kristoff didn't spend 1 second researching Japanese culture. All he wanted to do was understand Japanese aesthetics. He wanted to understand what they dress like. And this is some BS I have noticed with Americans, where they think in order to write a diverse story, you need to have aesthetics of other people. If the people do not behave like the people you are depicting, you have failed miserably. Imagine if I wrote a story with an American at its heart, and I wrote that guy as if he was a, Soviet Russian who does not believe in freedom of speech. Okay, that would be crazy. You can have that. You can have an American who does not believe in freedom of speech. Again, number two, you can have someone who is from Japan who is not very subtle. That would be called a rebel. That would be called someone who is not common, right? Someone who who wasn't raised there. But all the characters, no. One character, yes. That would be the funny guy or the rebel or whatever, right? But all the cast, it tells me that he hasn't spent 1 second researching any of the of how the Japanese people behave, and all he wanted to do was cash in and have diversity for the sake of money, for the sake of, oh, I have a diverse story and I'm a white man, so therefore it's now time for you to start sucking my and give me that publication deal and give me those millions of dollars. He did get those millions of dollars, but he's also going to get my reality check. He is an awful author. The story does not make sense. The representation, the cultural aspects in here, they are assassinations, and there was no attempt to write any story with any depth whatsoever. I'm really pissed off. In fact, I've always said, you don't have to write a diverse story unless you're going to do it well. Because if you write diverse stories, in fact, if you include diversity in your story, for the sake, listen to me, for the sake of cashing in and for the sake of marketing, you will end up with this situation. Only fame will save you. Jay Kristoff happens to have been famous, so he survived that one, okay? But generally speaking, you're not going to survive this one. It's best to not have diversity. In fact, it is best to not have diversity one more time. It is best to not have diversity unless you're going to properly depict it, okay? Unless you're going to properly depict experiences that you have not had, and unless you're going to depict cultures that you have not interacted with properly, to a point where a native would not be able to, criticize you. I would give this one 1 star out of 5. And tell me what you think down in the comments below about this particular dynamic where famous authors can get away with anything they want. All right? Tell me what you think of that. If you did enjoy this video, consider subscribing. Have a nice day.